Okay, I think we're going to record it and it will be posted later to YouTube. So we are going to go on. I want to welcome the Certification Advisory Council members. CAC members, after I state your name, please identify yourself and give your institution and your title. Dr. Jacob Tingle.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jacob Tingle. I'm at Trinity University in San Antonio, and I am the director of our sport management program.
Dr. Gina Anderson.
Good morning, everyone. Gina Anderson, Texas Women's University. I'm the Associate Dean for Educator Preparation and Partnerships. Good to see you.
Good morning, Dr. Lynette Gillis.
Hi, I'm Lynette Gillis, and I'm at Concordia University, Texas, and I am the CFO.
I believe Dr. Cheryl Sneed Green is absent today. Dr. Dorothy Langley.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Dr. Dorothy Langley. I'm at Jarvis Christian University, yay. We just moved into that. And I am the Dean of Adult and Continuing Education and also the project lead for Workforce Initiatives.
Okay. And as I noted, we have 2 CAC members who are absent, but we have 4 present, so we do have a quorum. The institution representatives and the site team leader, if you could introduce yourselves at the point that the CAC considers the certificate of authority application, that would be great. At this time, I will turn the meeting over to our CAC chair, Dr. Jacob Tingle.
Good morning again, everybody. Have the first order of business is to review the approve the minutes from the previous meeting. Have the CAC members had a chance to do that? And if so, do we have any revisions that are necessary? I'm not seeing anyone moving to unmute, so we need a motion to approve the minutes from the previous meeting.
I move to approve the minutes from the previous meeting.
Moved by motion by Dr. Anderson, seconded.
I second.
Dr. Langley. Do we need to discuss anything? We're fine. If so, let's just go ahead and vote. Dr. Anderson, yes or no to approve?
Yes.
Dr. Langley?
Yes.
Dr. Gillis?
Yes.
And then my vote is yes also. All right, thank you. So today we are here to consider the application from the Nettleman Institute of Surveying Engineering Technology. I'll just call it the Nettleman Institute from this point forward, if that's okay, for its certificate of authority. They've operated in Kerrville under a license from the Texas Workforce Commission since October of 2018, offering a non-degree program. The proposal is to offer an Associate of Applied Science in Surveying Engineering Technology. The Nettleman Institute intends to seek institutional accreditation from the SCOC once it receives the certificate authority from the coordinating board. Just a reminder to the CAC members that we did receive the site evaluation team report, and we have had also a chance to review Nettleman's response prior to today's meeting. Will the representatives from the Nettleman Institute introduce yourselves?
Good morning. My name is Dr. Tony Nettleman. I'm the director of NICET.
I'm Stephanie Nettleman, and I run the marketing and finance for NICET.
I'm Jerry Mahoon, and I'm a technical editor with NICET.
All right, thank you. And Dr. Benson, will you introduce yourself and talk to us about your role in the site team?
Sure. Good morning. My name is Stephen Benson. I'm the Vice President for Finance and Administration at McLennan Community College here in Waco, Texas. I chaired the site team and headed up the committee.
Thank you. Dr. Mayer, can you remind us of the process and the validity of the timeline?
certificate of authority is valid for 2 years. This would be Nettleman's first certificate of authority. If recommendation for approval, staff anticipates that the CAC and the commissioner's recommendations will be brought to the October 2022 cause committee and full quarterly board meeting to consider the institution's application. As a reminder, the CAC makes a recommendation to the commissioner and to the coordinating board members. The commissioner can make his own recommendation. The recommendations go to the coordinating board at a committee meeting and then to the full board meeting at a quarterly meeting. This certificate of authority, if approved, would then be valid from October 2022 to October 2024. Institutions can apply for and receive certificates of authority for a total of 8 years. At the end of 8 years, the institution must have received THECB recognized accreditation. Certification by the state of Texas is not accreditation, but merely a protection of the public interest while the institution pursues accreditation from a recognized agency.
All right, thank you very much. We now have an opportunity to hear from a representative from the Nettleman Institute. Who will be speaking?
I'd like to speak, please.
Okay, all right, Dr. Nettleman, we got 5 to 10 minutes. You can provide any overview of the degree program and accreditation plans for us. That would be great.
Thank you. First of all, thank everyone for their time. It's been a process, taking a lot of effort on everyone's part, especially Paul and Stephen. So thank you, both you and everybody else in the committees. To begin with, the mission of NYSET is to create practical, timeless, online education for land surveyors. And NYSET's entire vision is only for land surveyors. That's it. Will never be anything else, because I'm a land surveyor, been practicing for a long time, love it. Jerry, he's only a land surveyor. All our, part-time professors are land surveyors. And in the beginning, we started NYSET as a certificate program only because, we all felt like there was a desperate need in the land surveying profession for an online program that was practical and could help land surveyors get licensed in whatever state they practice in. I and my colleagues also operate a test preparation business for the past, 8 years. And we came across so many qualified students who wanted to become professional land surveyors, but could not because they couldn't get the education. I mean, they just didn't have the education. They were in remote areas. I mean, land surveyors are like mountain people. They're not, living in, New York City or something. So, we met these great people who just could not get licensed because they can't move across the country. There are very few land surveying programs anywhere in the country, maybe a few dozen at most. And, how many of those are ABET accredited? Maybe 8. And in fact, if you looked at the number of land surveying programs 20 years ago, 50 years ago, there was probably double or triple what there is today. And that's because land surveying programs, the biggest ones are 100 students. Most land surveying programs are 10 or 15 students max. And if you try to tell Purdue University you want to operate a land surveying program with 20 students, they shut it down. And that's exactly what happens. Purdue, Ohio State, University of Maine, all these big programs that existed when we were growing up are gone. There are no land surveying programs hardly at all across the country. And in fact, there are only 2 or 3 that are online. Well, if you've got a family, if you've got a career, if you've got obligations, you are not going to be able to take your whole family and your job across the country to move and get a land surveying degree. So most of these surveying technicians will be stuck in their technician job for the rest of their life because they can't get an education, which is, really a shame. Now, on the other side of things, with the employers, no one has enough surveyors to hire. And in fact, the land surveying membership has been in decline for the past 30 years. And it's gotten so bad that some states are trying to deregulate land surveying and basically blow up the entire profession and just won't have any more land surveyors. They'll just let engineers or architects or somebody else stamp the drawings, and whatever consequences that may be, that may be. In fact, when New Mexico State tried to close their program 2 years ago, the professors said, you can't close us because New Mexico requires a 4-year degree. And in reply back, New Mexico said, don't worry, we'll cancel the 4-year degree when we close your program. So the land surveying profession is in desperate need for better education, and on the terms of the students, not on the terms of larger institutions. Because the larger institutions are either closing or they're not properly serving their constituents in the surveying profession. So NICET was created to be taught by practicing land surveyors. So you have a full-time job and you instruct 1 or 2 classes per year. The administration is run by practicing surveyors like myself and Jerry and other individuals. And we take, direct advice from a industrial committee of, you guessed it, practicing surveyors. We're not like a traditional university. We don't have a big infrastructure. We don't have, dozens of secretaries or administrative staff running around. That's, we built NICET just like all our other businesses to be different. And we're not ashamed of that. It's not going to be a traditional university, and we don't have any plans for that. We had a great site visit, really enjoyed meeting with everybody, and especially the gentleman at Tyler Junior College, the other surveyor, got a lot of interesting ideas. And we know there's a lot of work left to build a university into what our dreams are, but based on the feedback we were given by THCEB site members in our IAC during our last March visit, we're doing that. We're forming a new board of directors with outside people. We've got a great advisory committee. We've hired 2 or 3 new instructors. And I think the biggest deficiency from the site visit was that, NICET is just too controlled by me, the director. And that's why I brought in Jerry as the chief academic officer. He has a lot of experience in traditional academia, just like I do. And Jerry's taken over helping with the curricula, the professors, hiring the instructors, planning out the course list and the course schedule. So, we listen to THCEB. We appreciate all your recommendations. We're working on each one of them. And we look forward to growing with our students. Because I should say the last part of NICET is we just don't believe in student loans. We don't believe in the traditional academic model. One of the differences we wanted to make was to have our graduates leave the program with no student debt. And you think, well, how do you do that? Well, I said, I'll make a deal with you guys. You can pay cash or check, which most people don't have money, so that's fine, especially surveyors, probably the poorest group around. Number 2, you could get a student loan if you wanted it, like a private student loan, that's your choice. But 3, I said, I'll make you a deal. If you guys go through the program, you get a B or better in your classes, you don't owe us anything until you graduate. You pay back 5% of your income for a certain number of years. This is an income sharing agreement. And if you don't get the job you wanted, if you don't make as much money as you expected, you don't have to pay us back as much. But, this is a program that was created from day one to, to not have student loan debt, because we don't want our students burdened for, 10 or 20 years with a degree that they can absolutely use, but there's no guarantees in life. So we're different. We have practicing surveyors, no student loans, small academic structure. But we're also interested in making sure we're always compliant with TWC and THCEB. We want to be in compliance. We want to get accredited. We want to grow. And to do that, we're treating THCEB more as partners and learning how to do it right than, regulators giving us permission to operate. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nettleman. I appreciate that. Let's see, Dr. Benson, can you give us a 5 to 10 minute summary of the site team report?
Sure, be happy to. Good morning again. So it was my pleasure to be part of the team that completed the site visit for the Nettleman Institute. We did the visit on December 8th through the 10th. My colleagues for the visit, as Dr. Nettleman mentioned, Willis Johnson, who has a lot of experience in this field. He serves as department chair for School of Professional and Technical Programs at Tyler Junior College, and then Rima Adil, who is the Dean of Students at Houston Community College, were the other two members of the team. First, let me say Dr. Nettleman and his staff at the institution were really helpful and cooperative as we went through this process, so we greatly appreciate their efforts. We know this isn't an easy process to go through. My institution just finished our 10-year CAC review, so I absolutely understand what you went through and can appreciate the work that you put into this. Also, Dr. Nettleman stated that they operate with a different model, and although we can appreciate that, our task was really to evaluate them based on the set criteria of this process. So that was what we did. So let me start by pointing out that the information that we provided was from the site visit alone and from what they provided right before the site visit. And so that's what we based all of our conclusions on. And so we concluded that the Nettleman Institute met 15 of the 24 standards. And so on page 23 of our report, you can see a summary and you can see what we felt that they met and which criteria we felt that they did not meet. I'm going to review just kind of briefly the different standards that we thought that they did not fully meet. Just give you just a really brief overview of those. And I know Dr. Nettleman provided some information of what they've done since our site visit. And so I know you have seen that. So the first one is number 2, qualification of institutional officers. What we felt like during our interviews, we were not able to interview all 3 of the school's executives. One of them was not available. We had some concerns with staffing levels and had concerns with limited higher education administrative experience. Number 3 was governance. When we reviewed the board meeting minutes, we found that they did not have a focus really on policy direction, financial oversight, and strategic planning. And we felt those were really important components for board activity. Number 5 was financial resources and stability. The overall planning for stability of the financial resources was a concern. Many of the staff were not receiving salaries or being compensated. The budget that was provided was not very detailed and had a few omissions. And then Dr. Nettleman referenced the income sharing agreement for paying for tuition after graduation, which was a bit of a concern because it creates some deferred income and just seemed like it creates some stability for finances for the future. Number 6 was financial records. During our site visit, the financial records and reports were not presented in accordance with the National Association of College and University Business Officers. Number 7 was institutional assessment. This standard has some specific guidelines. So sampling of this evidence didn't provide to show continual and effective assessment in planning, evaluating was taking place in all of these different aspects of the operation of the institution. Number 9 was administrative resources. We had some concerns with the size of the staff in performing all functions necessary to meet this standard. In particular, had some concerns with the lack of information on how to access learning resources. Number 11 was faculty qualifications. The applicant has an agreement with Straighterline to provide the opportunity for students to obtain general education courses through Straighterline. There was no documentation provided to ensure that the faculty of Straighterline meet the credentialing requirements of this standard. Number 15 was general education. And again, this specific point has some very specific guidance. And in number 2 of this one, we felt it was fulfilled because there's an articulation agreement. But item 3, Straighterline does not appear to have an accreditation by a board that's recognized as an accrediting agency or hold a certificate of authority. And then the last one is number 17, learning resources. There was a lack of guidance for students on how to access the online systems, which seems to really limit what students know about the learning resources that they have. And then the physical collection of learning resources had not been cataloged, or there wasn't a real logical organization of what students really had access to. So that concludes my summary of our site visit. It was my pleasure to help with the process, and Dr. Schuler was a great assistance to us as we did our work. So we appreciate his help, and we appreciate again Dr. Nettleman and his team and all of the cooperation that they provided to us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Benson. And I guess this is a question, I guess, for Dr. Nettleman before we get into other questions from the CAC members. The site visit was in December. We've received your responses. I'm not sure when those responses would have been written, but have you all made any updates that maybe aren't in their responses that would be pertinent for us to know before we begin, asking questions?
Sure, thank you. Well, we read through all the deficiencies, and some of those were easy to fix, like Dr. Benson talked about the physical books being cataloged. That's been done. Getting an online explanation of how to access all the resources, that's on the learning portal now. Dr. Benson talked about a lack of staff, and which I appreciate that. I mean, we have a few people who work at NICET, and in fact, now we have Jerry, who is the academic officer. That's a big change. So now instead of having 2 officers at the top, we have 3: academic officer, business officer, director. Also, now we have several part-time staff who are helping us with different parts like admissions, recruiting, marketing, things like that. So we have increased our staff levels. And finally, we're in the process of updating the board of directors with outside people, which was a recommendation. I've got a retired CFO who's going to be on the board of directors, got a retired business owner, and then finally a technology consultant. So these are not surveyors like on the IAC, they're disinterested parties to work with the curriculum, the finances, the administration, just, checks and balances. So we have taken many of those recommendations and put them in place. And the response we wrote was, I think, due in March, which is still current, but we've done several other things I've described since then, just because the meeting had been delayed a few times.
Great, thank you very much. That's very helpful. So I'm going to open it up to the members of the CAC. Just remember that we need to ask questions that will allow us to make a recommendation to either approve or deny. So I'll go mute. I've got a couple of questions too, but I'll go mute and turn it over to the other members.
I'll jump in. This is Lynette Gillis. I appreciate your report and your responses. I have a couple of questions on the financial stability of the institution moving forward. You've provided a updated budget, and I guess there's some concern I still would have as you describe some of the people you've hired and directors. with the salary line being what it is at $2,000 a month. And you're also showing a pretty significant loss for the year. I'm wondering if you have a multi-year budget, when you might start to turn a small profit or a break even from a cash flow, but also from an income perspective, if you've built out that longer term budget.
That's a great question.
Yeah, go ahead. Thank you.
Yeah, great questions. So to start things off, NICET will likely not be profitable until it has an associate's degree active, because most of the people want an associate's degree. That's the requirement in Texas to become a surveyor. You've got to have a 2-year degree. Frankly, we have several other businesses that basically pay all the bills of NICET, because we'd much rather have a deferred income later than we would have income now. And third, we do have a multi-year budget. We plan on breaking even the first year the associate's degree goes live, which is hopefully next year, once everything is approved. And the salaries are low because the 3 main officers, myself, Stephanie, and Jerry, are taking a small income to get the program going, but will be taking a real income once we have the revenue. But the other $2,000 a month budget for these different people, it basically cost us $2,000 a month for a full-time employee for the administrative side. So that's why in the multi-year budget, we have a few people part-time budgeted right now, which we're cash flowing from other businesses. But as we get more students, we'll be adding more full-time staff. And just to explain the finances a little bit more, we keep saying this isn't the usual university. That's true. We don't get public dollars. We don't get donations. We don't get research money. This is all funded by student tuition. So in order to have the extra income to pay all these things through NICET, we have to have the students. Until that happens, we're fully committed to paying all of NICET's expenses from our other businesses while that happens.
Thank you. And do you know what your student headcount would need to be for that in that break-even point?
Our student headcount would likely need to double. We only have 4 students this semester, and our ultimate goal, if decades down the road where everything is, accredited, approved, everything, we have 100 students is the absolute max we'll ever have. So if we could get to 10 or 15 students, that would be great. And I think 8 to 10 students would be the break-even point.
Thank you.
That was one of my questions as well, Dr. Nettleman. This is Gina Anderson from Texas Women's University. So if you need 8 to 10 students to break even, so I'm wondering a little bit more about your enrollment projections, I guess how you might go about recruiting more students, and if you could share a little bit more information about supply and demand for land surveyors.
Great questions. So in Texas, there are about 2,500 to 3,000 active land surveyors in the entire state. Typical enrollments in a Texas 2-year program are 10 to 15 students. If you go to Lone Star Houston, you go to Austin Community College, they're going to see 10 to 20 students at best. And in fact, even the 4-year program in Corpus Christi is low, maybe 50 or 60 students. But remember, Corpus Christi does not just land surveying in that program, they also do GIS. So it's kind of split 50-50 between. So that's our projection enrollment. That's the typical enrollment in Texas 2-year surveying programs, 10 to 20 students. We project that we will be doubling our enrollment each year because if we're going from 4 to 8, I mean, that's completely doable. 8 to 16, once the associate's degree is live, completely doable. And the way that we recruit students, right now, we don't do any recruiting because I don't like to start something that's not fully ready for the students. So we started off in 2018. We launched in 2019 with one student, a beta, to go through the courses and to be the tester. He was a previous student of mine in test prep that needed a certificate to get licensed, some extra hours. The second year, we opened it up to 3 or 4 students, which enrolled, and we planned on keeping it below 10 students until the associates is live, just because we want to make sure the faculty, the courses, everything works well. We want a great experience. Once we do launch any kind of marketing efforts, it's going to be still limited to a great website, great YouTube channel, and visits to the state society meetings where all the land surveyors meet twice a year to get their education, to network. So we've done all those things in the past in different land surveying businesses we operate, and we don't plan on doing a lot of marketing for NICET either.
If I could toss in a comment or two with regard to the recruitment and that type of thing. As Dr. Nettleman mentioned before, a number of states have lowered the bar for the qualifications for licensing as land surveyors. Some have eliminated the educational requirement entirely. So for that group of people, we're finding that passing the licensing exams at the national level as well as the jurisdictional ones in the states, the passing rates are abysmal. So they need some sort of formal education, and the certificate program provides them a jumping off spot with respect to that. As far as moving towards the associate degree program, there's a lot of concern within the professional organizations in every state. There's 50 organizations, one for each state, particularly in the states that don't have any type of educational program at all within their jurisdiction, about how we're going to replace the aging surveying population that's reaching retirement. The numbers are dropping, and we need more people to come into the profession, but more that are prepared to start passing those exams. So we think that the professional organizations can also serve as a recruitment tool for us once we get that associate degree program in place. And we can partner with them to encourage the students to come to the program and have that flexibility of an online program that fits around their schedule, as opposed to a traditional, pack up everything, move to university environment and be there full time.
That's a great comment. I mean, great comments. And generally, the land surveying profession has, great benefits. I mean, you can name your price, whatever if you want to be a business owner, an employee, whatever, you can name your price. There's all these job openings. You can move wherever you want to. Want to go to Alaska, Hawaii, and anything you want. But then you've got these schisms in the profession where there are degree requirements, like an associate's degree in a state, but there's not a single associate's degree offered in the state. How is that possible? And then you've got other issues where there are no education requirements, like in California, but the licensing pass rate is single digits. I mean, it's almost criminal to offer an exam to someone who has no ability to pass it. I mean, they're basically, just taking it again and again, dozens of times at $300 a piece, hoping that one time they'll pass the exam. And there are 3 exams required to become a surveyor in any state. So, I mean, it's like winning the lottery, if you're trying to get a license without some kind of education. So, we're trying to solve some of those issues because we've discussed these issues in the profession for decades with no solution to fix them.
This is Jacob, Dr. Tingle again. I just have a question. Can you just walk me through, let's say you're offering the associate's degree. what does that look like from a student perspective? How does Straighter Line fit in with that? How does the courses that you'll offer, can you, just, I guess, kind of more back up and help me see the picture from a student perspective? What are classes look like?
Another great question. So first of all, I know that the site visit group had an issue with Straighter Line, but it's my understanding that Straighter Line offers these same general ed courses to other Texas institutions approved by THCEB. And I can follow up with which ones those are, but Straighter Line is a large organization owned by Kaplan that offers just general ed courses. They're not a university. They're in the business of offering general ed courses to public and private institutions. Now, to answer how Straighter Line and NYSET kind of mesh together, the idea of NYSET is a building block. You want to get an associate's degree, spend a year. You want to get you want to get a certificate, spend a year. You want to get an associate, spend 2 years. You want to get a bachelor's, spend 4 years. It drove me crazy at University of Florida, Texas A&M, where I taught, that these students would come in and half of their transfer credit hours would be rejected for sometimes legitimate reasons, sometimes institutional reasons. Well, the building block idea is that you can start off with a certificate, go to an associate's, go to a bachelor's, every course will transfer, guaranteed. If you take a certificate from us, you'll always transfer all your hours to the associates. The way that we fit in with Straighter Line is that NYSET offers the land surveying courses. Straighter Line offers the general ed, like English, math, physics, whatever general ed is required. Now, NYSET administration takes the Straighter Line courses. We know what they're offering. We've approved their syllabus. We've approved their course material. We know what they're going to teach our students before the students ever enter that class. And we've actually tested these courses, which are listed in our proposed curriculum. So NYSET is the administrator and the approver of which Straighter Line courses they can take. We're the litmus test to make sure the Straighter Line courses are rigorous enough for our students and meet the needs of the students. But Straighter Line employs the professors to teach the courses. They provide the material. They give the syllabus, so basically NYSET does land surveying, Straighter Line does general ed, and NYSET is the administrator of both sides of that. And they take these courses directly through NYSET. They don't pay Straighter Line, they don't sign a contract, everything is through us. And the students don't even know a lot of the time they're on Straighter Line because we get a domain, all that stuff. But I'm not an English teacher, Jerry's not a physics teacher. You don't want us teaching general ed courses.
That's very helpful. Thank you very much. That's helpful.
Thank you. This is Dr. Langley from Jarvis University. And I wanted to understand what the student financial package would look like once you did the associates, because I'm looking at now the website, they pay by semester. And then you have income sharing agreement for now. What does it look like going into the future for the student?
Exactly the same. So, one of the ways NYSET is different is we charge $300 an hour for a credit hour. There's no fees, there's no extra costs, there's no taxes, it's $300 an hour. So if the student wants to know how much they're going to pay for college, they can multiply the credit hours by 300, and there's 100% transparency on the cost. There's no change for the associates. There's no change in payment method, no change in cost. Everything's the same.
So what if students don't have enough to pay for your, I deal in the real world, y'all. So I deal with students all the time. So my question is, what if students don't have sufficient funds to pay for your program? What other options do they have?
Well, they have a lot of options. The first one, which we talk about, is scholarships. I was on the scholarship committee at Texas A&M for years as a professor, and we had hundreds of thousands of dollars a year in scholarships, not through the university in general, but through national, state, local societies. And most of the time, we didn't have enough students apply to pay the scholarships out. We would regularly lose money, and it would be as simple as a $500 scholarship from the local genealogical society or $1,000 from the National Surveyor Society. And, the first step I tell the students is apply for scholarships. You're almost guaranteed to get at least a few $1,000s. Second, as you know, we got the income sharing agreement. Basically, if you sign a contract to get a B or better, you do your work. It's not impossible to get a B or better in school, and you pay it back later if you want to. Or, right now we have one student who's getting a private student loan, and that's totally fine. So scholarships, loans, income sharing agreement, or we have a lot of students whose employers are paying for it. Now, remember, NICET was really built for the working professional. You've been working in surveying, you're coming here 1 or 2 classes per semester while you're working. Pretty much any employer will pay for your college courses. I mean, so a lot of times the student's employer writes us a check directly and the students take the work. And if they don't get a C or better, they have to pay back their employer, but that's really nothing to do with us.
Okay, thank you. So basically what you would probably do is have a conversation with the student when they first enroll and let them know all these particular options or what your requirements are.
That's correct. And if you look on the NICET website, we have what's called a 15-minute call. And if you're interested in enrolling, you basically talk to an admissions advisor. Who are you? What kind of education experience do you have? Could NICET benefit you? And sometimes we say no, and objectively. And then we talk about curriculum, expectations, and at the end we talk about finances. But I mean, we're more interested in kind of holistically learning about the student first, and then we'll find the money if you need to go to school.
Ooh, that was a nice answer. Thank you.
This is Lynette again, and I have a couple more questions sort of as a follow-up to the financing. You talked about advertising and using website, and the budget shows 0 for website. And insurance, there's some other things I'd be concerned about. The web hosting, some particularly because you're an online program. Can you share, I'm making the assumption right now that might be covered in one of your other companies or another place that you're putting that. But can you share kind of what you anticipate those expenses to be? And again, how that looks in a full model?
Sure. So we do employ a full-time marketing and web design person at the test prep company who built the NICET website. We have a private server, which is about $1,500 a month, which NICET is hosted on basically for free because we have the server. And I'm sure that those budget items will grow as the program grows. Just, the bigger the program, the more information has to be done, the more current the website. Now, insurance, we do have general insurance for things like cyber, and if someone trips and falls in our office or other things. And I'd be interested to know more specifically what insurance you're looking for, because, frankly, maybe we don't have it, or maybe we do, we don't know.
Yes, I'm thinking insurance if you were to have a claim against you by a student for any particular reason, but what be it harassment or, there's a variety of things, but some sort of institutional risk insurance?
I know that we have a general insurance policy for liability, and all of those are like unintentional torts like negligence or other, claims from students or faculty or anybody, the mailman comes in and trips on the doorstep, which has happened before with other people. I'm sure they gotten sued for it. But I don't think we have an institutional policy specifically, but I'll definitely look into that.
This is Dr. Tingle again. I just have a couple of questions related to institutional assessment. I guess when a student takes one of your courses, I guess not a straighter line course, are there faculty evaluations? And if so, what happens with those? How do those move forward, I guess?
Sure. So just to start off, the same evaluations happen with our courses and straighter line. So we give evaluations on general ed, we give evaluations on the surveying courses. It's all the same, because to the student, straighter line and NICET courses are the same. They look a little different, but the same. So there's several ways we assess the quality of a course, of the faculty, of the institution at the end of the semester. The first one is student evaluations. They get like a radio chart where they say, from disagree to agree. What do you think about the curriculum? What do you think about the course? What do you think about the books? What do you think about the professor? And they get a prompt at the end to tell us about their experience. But that's not really that's not the entire evaluation. The faculty member also evaluates the course in terms of like learning objectives. So say we've assigned 2 learning objectives to this digital drafting course. The instructor needs to do an end of course evaluation in general about good things, bad things, what to improve next semester, the books, the faculty, the students, all that. But they also do the same exercise in the learning objectives where they rate, how well the course connected to that specific learning objective. And they do that by like choosing a subset of like, this course's learning objective was team development. Well, we had 2 projects where there were teams. So let's look at the scores on those lessons from the 2 projects and, diagnose it. So all of that, the faculty evaluations and the student evaluations are discussed in the faculty meetings with myself, the director, and then they go and they get distributed to the IAC and the board of directors. So it kind of starts at the bottom and cycles its way to the top over the next few months. And then hopefully in the faculty needs and, what's your plans next year? The idea is that the same template gets used next year and says, hey, I was supposed to make a new project. So I did. So this year I made a new project and it went terribly. So I'm going to have to, redo the project. And it kind of starts this, really sick cycle all over again. So, it's meant to be kind of a 360. So whatever you suggested last year is documented in this year's evaluation and tested, and then gets recycled for the next evaluation.
But throw in a comment with respect to that also. Ultimately, we're looking for ABET accreditation for the associate degree program, potentially a bachelor's degree program further down the line. And the time to start planning for the ABET requirements is early on so that they're built into the system when we apply for the accreditation. And ABET has specific requirements for program outcomes and also student outcomes, and to assess those student outcomes. They've got a list of 5 different outcomes that the program has to support. I just came out of an engineering program where I taught the surveying course, And we had just gone through a 2-year process of integrating those things into that ABET accredited program, into our individual classes, that type of thing. So we're going to be kind of using that as a model jumping off point to integrate that within our courses. So we've got a continuous improvement aspect built into the program from the beginning.
That's very helpful. Thank you. And so at the course level, it sounds like there are some strong plans and things that are already going on. Can you describe plans for institutional level assessment?
Sure. So we've had an IAC since we began NICET, because that's a requirement at TWC as well. And, the idea is, there's like 5 different areas of review for administrative level, and then the IAC, and then the board of directors. And it's like books and supplies, faculty and faculty development, administrative support, these areas. And all of the things we learn at the lower level, like the faculty student evaluations, get cycled up to those same IAC board of directors, gets changed. And the good thing is, one of the benefits of being small is we can make a change. If we decide we want to switch library services, what does it take? I email the IAC, we talk about an email, explain what's up. They agree to it, we do it. It takes a few days. It doesn't take weeks or months or years to make an important change. So all of these, areas of focus that are really similar in TWC, THCEB, SACS accreditation, we learn from what needs to be changed from year to year. We can do it pretty quickly and not have to go through a lot of hassle and then just change it. I mean, it's not a big deal.
Dr. Nettleman, one of the things I noticed on the response that had to do with the learning resources, and I see that you made some significant changes to that in your response. I was just wondering, have you received any feedback from the students regarding the resources or the changes?
Well, the main feedback we've gotten in terms of what the students like is, we have a huge library of surveying books that basically nobody has. I mean, they've been destroyed or out of print for decades. And you think, well, how can a book that's 50 years old, 100 years old, I just used a book that was 200 years old. How could that ever apply to surveying today? Well, really, the principles of surveying haven't changed at all. I mean, I could be a practicing surveyor in 1922, and it really wouldn't make any difference except the technology has changed. And really, the technology's done surveyors more of a disservice than anything in terms of, compensation. So anyways, the students really love having these physical books. We can mail them a book for free. We also have a lot of out of copyright books, which are PDFs, and students can access at any time. Now, I'll tell you that the LEARN, the LIRN resources we pay for, it's required from TWC. It's an expectation from, THCEB. The students don't use it a lot, but they have access to it 24/7. It's like a general, resources. The only other useful thing we have is, we have a librarian who is on contract, and the librarian's primary role right now is to help students request interlibrary loan books. And she does that quite a bit. And I use her getting ILL books for, my research projects and stuff. So it's nice having an educational institution that can go out to other institutions and get books like that. And it's as simple as emailing her. Her information's on our website. It's on the student portal. The student basically says, I'm John Smith. I'd like to get this book. They can get their textbook for free for the semester and not pay for it. Now, another interesting thing about NICET, we don't require the newest textbooks. In fact, I write a lot of textbooks for LexisNexis and Wiley, places like that. Textbooks don't change very much. And we usually recommend buying the $10 textbook that's 2 or 3 years old than buying a $160 textbook that's brand new. So, and in fact, to teach my elementary surveying course, I use an edition that's 3 editions previous to the current one, but pretty much is the exact same book. I mean, maybe a few pages are different, but we actively advise the students to buy the old textbook, which I use. So we're on the same edition, and they can buy that book for, 1/20th of the price of the new textbook. So just another difference in NICET as compared to some other institutions.
Thank you.
Piggyback off of that, Dr. Nettleman, I wanted to circle back around to this idea about technology advances and how that impacts the land surveyor role, and how will you negotiate that in your program, as well as, in addition to using older textbooks, are you looking at open educational resources, or so what advances in the field that include technology and newer sources are you planning or not planning on using?
Great question. So NICET, our mission is to empower the surveyor for his entire career, not just to get him, practicing today. Because if you went to school in 1990, it's completely different, technology that it is today. So our primary focus is on the principles of land surveying, which have not changed in 200 years. But we also integrate the newest technology, drones, laser scanning, photogrammetry, all this satellite images, all this great stuff into every curriculum. Now, it's funny, if you look at most land surveying programs today, they do not have the newest technology. They don't have a laser scanner, they don't have a drone. They're using, 5 or 10-year-old surveying equipment, which is outdated and usually doesn't work very well. On the other hand, at NICET for our summer field camp, we have agreements with manufacturers who basically bring us the new toys for a week. We get to use them for free. And then hopefully the students will buy that stuff in years later, but the students get the newest stuff. And differently from a lot of traditional surveying programs, a lot of traditional surveying curricula have all their old courses, but they add in this extra course like new technology and surveying, where they try to cover all the new technology in one semester as an elective. NICET, we integrate all that technology in every course. So it's built in to give you the level of knowledge you need to practice for a lifetime in every course. We don't just add in one course of new technology and hope that kind of bridges the gap for a few years.
It's important to remember that there are basically 2 sides to land surveying. There's the technology side, and that's ever evolving. You can never, that's one of the problems with textbooks. You buy a current textbook and it's obsolete technologically speaking by the time it's published. So there's a technology side of things, and that's what everybody sees with the surveyor on the field. But a more important part is the legal side of surveying. Like I always tell my students, it doesn't matter if you measure the wrong thing very accurately, it's wrong. You got to know what to measure. And that's part of what's getting lost in a lot of educational programs is you get caught up in the technology side of things, and the legal side starts to fall apart because anybody can teach the technology, but not everybody can teach the legal side of surveying. And the technology, we got to remember, is just a tool. That's why integrating it within the curriculum, as opposed to making it a standalone thing, makes more sense. And anything that you teach them technologically within a curriculum, whether it's software or hardware, when they go to work for an employer, they could be using totally different brands of things, different software, different hardware. But as long as the student understands the concepts behind that, they'll be able to adapt to that. And the analogy I always used is when you teach somebody word processing, that's teaching them software. That's not teaching them how to write. If you teach them grammar, English, how to compose sentences, proper composition of narratives, then it doesn't matter which word processor you use. That's just a tool. But if you understand the concepts, you can adapt to that tool.
That's a great explanation, Jerry. Thank you. And I'll tell you one other thing that scares me about land surveying education, which is similar to your question. If you go to a lot of institutions, even in Texas for land surveying, they have no land surveyors teaching these courses. And you think, what do you mean? You don't have land surveyors teaching land surveying courses? Well, they hire these similar professions that are not licensed land surveyors to teach these courses. And it drove me crazy as a student, because I started at New Mexico State University where they were all licensed land surveyors. So I assumed this is just how, everything works. And I went to other institutions like University of Florida or Texas A&M Corpus Christi, where there wasn't a single, licensed surveyor teaching. And it was just, it doesn't compute for me that you could have somebody who's never done a land survey teaching the next generation of land surveyors.
Thank you for all of that. I also have another question about, specifically in the STEM areas, gender equity, and kind of how you're possibly looking at women in these careers, and how you might consider increasing the gender equity of land surveyors.
So there is basically no gender equity in the professional land surveying licensure pool. I mean, we had one female get licensed in Florida last quarter, and it made the news bulletin. We have a female get licensed in Florida. This is what's going on here. Well, one of the reasons why females, don't come into the surveying profession is, I think, because, it's such a male dominated field. They may feel like, they're going to be the odd person out in the classroom. And I've had feedback from other female students in the program that say, I like being online because I can interact with my classmates, the professors, all that, without being put on the spot as the only female in the class, which is, typical. A lot of programs may not have any women enrolled in them. So the marketing efforts and the lead generation efforts we've done so far, things like talking on podcasts about the profession, tend to skew young, and there are a lot of female listeners and interacting. And we talk about getting scholarships for our students. That's a fantastic avenue. There's a lot of STEM scholarships for women, and it's a great profession for females because, a lot of times the engineers have requirements to have so many minority people in the contract, and they choose the surveyor as the minority because they don't want to have to deal with that in the engineering main contract. I know a female who been working in Florida for decades, and she's one of the most successful surveyors around the Orlando area because of, her gender diversity. So I think we have a lot of opportunity to change the surveying profession, and maybe, we can fix the lack of surveyors, the declining number of surveyors, by inviting more minorities into the profession, which really hasn't been done up to this point.
So some of the strongest advocates we have for females and other underrepresented populations within the surveying profession are people, members of those groups that are already licensed. They're extremely active at the professional levels, both statewide and nationally. As a matter of fact, the National Society of Professional Surveyors, which is the umbrella organization above all the state organizations, the president of that is a female. And that becomes a great role model, and they become very strong advocates for the programs. So going back to what I was mentioning before about partnering with professional organizations as a recruitment tool, that's another way to start to bring in these underrepresented populations into the programs. Let them know if this exists and they can get into it.
Yep, great answer, Jerry. And the profession in general is very open to having females and other minorities come in. It's just difficult to get everyone interested when they don't see themselves, older selves of mirror images there. So maybe, an online program could be the growth driver for that.
It's easier in that type of environment to get a successful female or underrepresented company leader talk to the students on a broad, diverse national level than it is to try to bring in somebody like that to talk to a physical classroom. So that type of environment encourages more of that type of participation and help with those types of professionals.
I guess it's a potentially related question, but it is on the back end. So, I know you're using a different model, and there's a lot about what you're describing that I really like. So this question is, though, coming from a more traditional model, just understanding how I'm framing it. What do you do in terms of helping students post-graduation? So we call it career services. It could be something, it could be labeled as something else, but that idea of once they are finishing, how do they get, how do they get jobs? And is that something that you all assist with now? If not, what are plans for that?
Yes, we all assist now, myself, the admissions coordinator, Steph, Jerry, and we have a vacant position for a dedicated career services person. But frankly, we need more graduates to finish the program before we can have a full-time person. Now, I'll tell you that right now, and even in years past, when I was graduating college, most students had job offers before they ever graduated, like a year, or a lot of companies will bring you in for an internship. And if they like you, they'll give you a job offer on the spot and say, hey, when you graduate next year, show up, no interview required. This is your golden ticket. So in the surveying profession, there are many more job openings than there are potential people. That's not an issue of this whole nobody wants to work thing these days. This has been going on for years. So most students have a job offer signed before they ever graduate. Second, a lot of our students already have a job and they're going to get upgraded in their position once they get the certificate. So they're basically a survey technician. And as soon as they have the certificate, they're going to take their exams, become a professional. They basically double their money. And third, we have this model of career services. We've used this before where I used to work as a professor, where we invite companies in for a 30-minute presentation, and then they have job interviews after the presentation individually. It works great. If you have a company that has 6 openings, you have a lunch, talk with the students, and then as we give them individual rooms, which, in our case, it's a digital room, but they basically meet the students. They have resumes. All the students bring their resumes. They get a job offer. They sign a contract within the lunch meeting, and they're good to go. So the primary recruiting tool is, if the student needs a job, they can have the lunch and learn, get an interview guaranteed. If the employer likes them, they sign a contract. But career services is really not we want to connect employers with students, and we get a lot of emails from employers saying, hey, do you have someone who can fill this role? We just mass distribute it to all the students. They can deal with it. But career services is not a hard recruiting effort because there are so many job openings. The students, if they have a vehicle, if they have a driver's license, they have a little bit of knowledge, they can get a surveying job right now. But the problem is that the people without an education who come on as technicians, a lot of times, which is really funny, I want this job, I'm going to sign up. Within 24 hours, they quit. It's a tough job.
Thank you. That helps a lot. I appreciate that.
This is Dorothy again. I have one last question, and I may have missed this, but how many students have graduated from your certification programs?
So we had our beta student, he graduated, and then that was 2 years ago. And then last year we enrolled 4 students. I think 2 of them are still active. 2 of them dropped out just for personal reasons, and they're still enrolled, but we're still so new. I think we have 1 graduate.
Thank you.
I have a question, and Cam or Paul or Dr. Jackson, if this is not an appropriate question to ask at this time, just let me know. But I guess I am interested in the I don't know if concern is the right word with straighter line. So I read the response. I've gone to the ACE website that they've seen. Again, my question is, and I don't want to ask it of, of Dr. Nettleman, because I think he's answered it in the response. But I guess my question is straighter line a legitimate use, organization for them to use to meet that standard? And if not, is that something that we as the CAC can recommend some kind of changes or whatever? So that's, I just don't know how to handle that. What is it?
Yeah.
Standard 11 question.
Yeah, Dr. Tingle, be glad to address that. The private unaccredited institutions have different rules to go by, so keep that in mind. So in those rules for private unaccredited institutions, it specifically states that the gen eds, if they get it from another institution, that institution has to be accredited by a THECB approved accreditor. So it's pretty straightforward about that. So it would be up before CAC could make a recommendation. They would probably need before they can make a recommendation of yes, they would need to see a different source of gen eds.
Okay, thank you. That's very clear for me. Thanks.
And just to add to that, just for real quick, the CAC, as has been done in the past, can ask for information to be given to them before they make a decision. So they can defer and ask for further information.
Thank you. Well, that was my last question. I think Dr. Langley, you said that was going to be your last question. Does anybody else on the CAC have any other questions?
Could I make one comment about straighter line? Yeah, I mean, we chose straighter line because, we were told by straighter line that they were already, other Texas approved accredited institutions are using straighter line courses today, big programs. And if we need to do something different, if we need to give you more information, I mean, we're treating this interaction as a partnership, not a compliance thing. So, I mean, work with us, tell us what we need to do, what information you need, because I want straighter line to work. And I want to fully explore that. But if it's, not going to work, tell me what else we need to do and we'll do it.
Thank you. Yeah.
I'll chime in. It's Tony again. It's just that there's different requirements for an unaccredited institution. We have that standard that's in our rule, and it's a pretty bright line standard. So straighter line would either need to have accreditation by one of the institutional accrediting agencies that we recognize, which I don't think that they have been willing to do, or you would need to use somebody else who has either a certificate of authorization or a certificate of authority, or has that recognized accreditation. And so that's the differentiation. Straighter line is probably very much correct that they are used by a lot of other institutions. but that is under that institution's accreditation. And so that's really the major difference.
Okay, that's great. And, if we could, have like a three-way conversation between myself, Straighterline, and THCB to explore them getting accredited and see if they're willing to do that. If not, I guess I'm willing to bring in faculty on, directly under NICET to teach these courses. It's not a problem. But, I'd like to fully explore Straighterline to make sure they're not willing to do it or, don't meet the criteria, and then move into the, NICET only instructors, because if that's what it takes, we're willing to do whatever it takes to meet your standards.
And keep in mind that you would be able to go to an accredited institution. It doesn't, Straighterline just happens to not be accredited.
That's great information, Paul. Thank you.
So I think from our standpoint, it looks like our questions have been, I guess, exhausted. So just as a reminder that the CAC is tasked with making a recommendation to the commissioner and the coordinating board regarding the current application. So based on our discussion and questions today, the CAC can do a couple of things. We can either make a recommendation to approve, make a recommendation to deny, or as Dr. Schuler had mentioned, we can also defer the recommendation and ask for additional information that we would specify. So before I get into any further discussion or making asking for a motion, does anybody from the Higher Education Coordinating Board staff have any recommendations or restrictions or conditions that we should take into consideration when making a motion?
Yes, if you make the motion to recommend approval, the coordinating board staff would have a couple of conditions. I have a couple, and Dr. Schuler might have another one to add. But so Nettleman Institute has met the operational requirement and has been legally operating for a minimum of 2 years, enrolling non-degree students and conducting classes in Texas under a TWC licensure. So therefore, unlike in the past where we've had brand new institutions, we would have no additional conditions, restrictions, or reporting requirements that are mandatory. However, we would like to suggest the following conditions if you recommend approval of the certificate of authority. During the term of the certificate of authority, Nettleman Institute must provide the coordinating board with a copy of each version of an income share agreement it enters into with students. The income share agreement must include a quantifiable definition of average pay and terms under which students will be required to pay tuition and fees, terms under which students will be forgiven tuition and fees, and conditions which may allow termination of the agreement without penalty. Second, we would request a condition that during the term of the certificate of authority, Nettleman Institute must provide to the coordinating board the following information to show it continues to be financially viable and able to serve the educational needs of its students. Every 6 months, they would provide a current balance sheet and estimated cash flow for the upcoming 6 months. And once per year, provide an audited financial statement for the institution. And Dr. Schiller, I believe you had one that you were going to add about general ed.
Well, the general ed would have to be, as Dr. Nettleman mentioned, either taught by the institution or by an accredited institution. And so that needs to happen, whether it's a condition of approval or whether you make it something that they have to do before they can get approval from CAC.
are those the stipulations? Are there, I don't want to cut off if there are any others. Okay. Okay. To my fellow members, I need to, I'm asking for a motion and a second to either recommend approval or recommend denial of Nettleman Institute's application. Or if you would rather defer the recommendation at this time. So do I have, does anyone want to make a motion?
This is Lynette. I suppose I would move to defer.
Does anyone second that motion?
Second it.
Then, Dr. Tinkle, I would ask what information the CAC committee would need to consider before they could make a motion to approve or deny.
The one for me would be the gen ed, the gen ed provider, I guess. Others might have others, but.
Gen ed providers the same for me.
I would like to see a multi-year budget that reflects some actual expenses and without them being more transparent in the expenses that are real to the institution without them being in other organizations.
I concur with Dr. Gillis and Tingle as well.
So what I'm hearing then, Cam, is the two specific things with regarding the deferment would be that detailed budget, and then also I'll just say, a resolution to the straighter line, the gen ed requirement. Those are the two that I'm hearing.
Okay. And did I hear correctly, a multi-year budget that reflects and has transparency of expenses without support from other organizations, or did I read that into that? Sorry, can you?
Sorry. Or it could be included, it just needs to be transparent about where those funds are coming from.
Okay, great. So we have a motion and a second to defer based on those two, based on those two specific things that the CAC would like to see. So I'll just go around. Dr. Anderson, yes or no on the motion to defer?
Yes.
Dr. Langley?
Yes.
Dr. Gillis?
Yes.
And my vote is yes also. Cam, I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay. I'm just taking notes. Then we will reschedule Nettleman Institute for the next CAC meeting. And Dr. Schuler will work with them on getting that information and working to ensure that Tony, you have all that you need to work on that as well. And the next meeting, I'll give you the dates here in a minute. However, we have 3 CAC members whose terms are expiring. So it will be a different CAC the next time you come back. Nettleman representatives, I just want to acknowledge that our chair, Jacob Tingle, Dr. Hua Lee, and Dr. Lynette Gillis, their terms are expiring. You have served us well, and we really want to thank you for your service. And don't be surprised if we ask you to serve in the future again. You've been great team members. I want to thank all of the CAC members. You are an outstanding group of faculty and administrators who ask insightful questions, and you genuinely care about the students you serve. I look forward to continued work with Doctors Dorothy Langley, Gina Anderson, and Cheryl Sneed Green. And for the three of you, I know Cheryl is not here, but please consider volunteering to be the CAC chair because Dr. Tinkle will be rolling off. And it's always helpful to have a great chair. As of July 28th, this last week, we will have 3 new members at the next meeting. And since they have been approved, I would like to announce who they are. Jane Michella is Executive Vice President and Provost at Parker University. John Vassar is Provost and Senior Vice President for Academic Affairs at University of Mary Hardin Baylor. And Tom Ronk is Director of Workforce Quality and Development at Houston Community College System. Moving into the next agenda item, the next 2 scheduled CAC meetings. So please note this, Tony, is November 3rd. So if you could put that on your calendar, and February 2nd, 2023. Both are on Thursdays. We have had a lot of inquiries, as we always do, and work behind the scenes on new applications. So we expect a busy year during academic year 2022 to 2023. As a reminder, this committee has been authorized to continue meeting virtually. Staff will provide an update should this change. Since we do have a small advisory committee, remember we do need each CAC member to participate, especially when members leave an institution or have an unavoidable conflict, as 2 did today. Please put the upcoming meeting dates on your calendar for the 3 that are continuing. And I thank you for your willingness to serve and ensure we always have a quorum. Finally, please email me any summary of expenses you have for this meeting. We are required to report the amount advisory committee members expend for meetings. And expenses may include, if you have to travel, copies you made, and so forth. That's all I have, Dr. Tinkle.
Thank you very much. And thank you everyone for attending and to the Nettleman Institute representatives in particular. I'm sorry I won't be here for your next meeting, but I really appreciate your time and all the work that you're doing on your program. So just for me as an outgoing member, thank you for your time today. I really appreciate it. And we will officially adjourn the meeting. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.